Some quiet people don't leave physically. They still reply, still show up, still sit in the same room. But emotionally, they disappear. And the strange part is, most people never notice when it happens because quiet people are experts at hiding emotional distance. They know how to smile at the right time, how to listen without speaking much, how to stay present without truly being there. Sometimes they learned this very early to become less visible, less difficult, less emotional. So instead of expressing pain, they slowly remove themselves from the inside out. You can usually see it in small moments. A person who used to laugh a little more now just nods quietly. Someone who once shared pieces of themselves now answers with one sentence, not cold, not angry, just absent. And because they aren't dramatic about it, people assume nothing is wrong. But emotional disappearance rarely looks dramatic. It looks like silence becoming heavier over time. Quiet people often spend years observing others, watching reactions, reading moods, measuring emotional safety. They notice things most people miss: the slight change in someone's tone, the pause before a reply, the feeling of being tolerated instead of welcomed. And after enough disappointment, many quiet people stop reaching emotionally. Not because they don't care, but because caring too deeply without feeling understood becomes exhausting. A lot of emotionally quiet people were once emotionally expressive. That's what people misunderstand. They weren't born distant. Many of them simply learned that vulnerability was unsafe. Maybe every time they opened up, they felt ignored. Maybe they were interrupted too often, misunderstood too often, made to feel too sensitive. So eventually, they adapted, not loudly, quietly. And quiet adaptations are dangerous because nobody notices them happening. A loud person breaks down publicly. A quiet person disappears internally. One day they stop explaining how they feel. Then they stop expecting support. Then they stop believing anyone would truly understand them anyway. And after a while, silence becomes emotional self-protection. The human mind is strange like that. When someone experiences emotional disappointment repeatedly, the brain begins protecting itself from future hurt. Not always through anger, sometimes through detachment. The nervous system slowly decides it's safer not to need too much. So the person becomes emotionally smaller, less expressive, less hopeful, less emotionally visible. Not because they lost emotions, but because hiding emotions started feeling safer than sharing them. And the saddest part is, many quiet people still feel everything deeply, maybe deeper than most. They just stopped showing it externally. You'll sit next to them and think they're calm. Meanwhile, their mind is carrying entire conversations they never said out loud, entire memories they never processed, entire feelings they never believed had space to exist. Some people confuse quietness with emotional stability, but they are not the same thing. Sometimes quietness is exhaustion. Sometimes it's emotional survival. Sometimes it's a person who became tired of translating their inner world for people who never really listened, so they stopped trying. Not suddenly, gradually, and eventually, they master emotional invisibility. They become easy to be around, low maintenance, understanding, patient, but internally, they feel farther away from everyone every year. The internet made this even more common. Now people can disappear emotionally while remaining constantly visible. posting, replying, scrolling, reacting, but emotionally disconnected from almost everything. Because modern loneliness doesn't always look lonely anymore. Sometimes it looks highly functional. A person answering messages while feeling emotionally numb. A person laughing in group chats while secretly feeling detached from everyone inside them. A person constantly online, but emotionally unreachable. Quiet people especially learn how to survive emotionally through observation instead of expression. They watch more than they speak, feel more than they explain. And over time, this creates a strange emotional isolation because the more deeply someone observes human behavior, the harder it becomes to feel truly understood by others. They start noticing how often conversations are performative, how rarely people ask questions they genuinely care about, how many interactions are just automatic social rituals. And once someone becomes deeply aware of emotional insincerity, they begin withdrawing naturally. Not out of arrogance, out of exhaustion. Some quiet people also carry a hidden fear. If people fully knew me, would they still stay? So, instead of risking rejection, they slowly offer less of themselves, less honesty, less emotion, less need, until eventually, even the people close to them only know the surface version. And the strange thing is, many emotionally disappearing people still desperately want connection. They still want someone to notice, someone patient enough to hear the things they struggle saying, someone emotionally safe. But after enough emotional disappointment, hope becomes quieter too. So they tell themselves things like, "It's not that important. I'm just tired. It'll pass." But deep down, what they often feel is emotional loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of feeling emotionally unseen. And emotional invisibility changes people slowly. It changes how they speak, how they trust, how much space they allow themselves to take up. Some begin apologizing for everything. Some become hyper-independent. Some stop asking for help completely, because depending on others started feeling emotionally dangerous a long time ago. You can usually recognize emotionally disappearing people by one thing. They rarely believe their feelings matter as much as everyone else's, so they become listeners instead of speakers, observers instead of participants, emotionally present for everyone, while privately disappearing themselves. And honestly, many people only notice quiet people after they emotionally leave, after they stop trying, stop reaching out, stop caring the same way, because humans often notice absence more than quiet suffering. And by then, the distance has usually existed for years. But maybe the most painful part is this. Quiet people often become incredibly good at surviving without emotional support. So good that nobody realizes they needed it in the first place. They learn how to comfort themselves, distract themselves, disappear into music, thoughts, late-night scrolling, imaginary conversations. Anything that makes emotional isolation feel softer for a moment, and eventually their inner world becomes far louder than their outer one. 1,000 emotions hidden behind calm behavior. A deep need for connection hidden behind independence. A person silently hoping someone notices without them having to beg for it. Maybe that's why emotionally intelligent people often look distant, not because they feel less, but because they've spent too much time feeling everything alone. And sometimes the quietest people in the room are carrying the heaviest emotional worlds Worlds nobody sees, worlds nobody asks about, worlds carefully hidden behind simple words like, "I'm fine." Maybe you've met someone like this, or maybe you became this person yourself, little by little. Conversation by conversation, disappointment by disappointment, not disappearing physically, just emotionally, quietly. And maybe the real tragedy is that emotionally disappearing people are often the ones who would have loved the deepest if they had felt safe enough to stay emotionally open. So the next time someone becomes quieter, don't only ask where they went physically. Sometimes the real disappearance happened long before that. Some people vanish emotionally while standing right in front of you, still smiling, still listening, still there, but internally already gone.